The whispering walls. My name is Sarah, and I recently moved into an old apartment in a quiet neighborhood. I was excited about my newfound independence, but also a bit nervous about living alone for the first time. The apartment was charming, with its vintage fixtures and hardwood floors, but it had an eerie feel to it that I couldn't quite shake off. Little did I know, my excitement would soon turn into a nightmare that would haunt me forever. It all started innocently enough. One night, as I was lying in bed, I heard faint whispers. At first, I thought it was just my imagination or perhaps the neighbors. I tried to ignore it, but the whispers persisted. They were so soft that I couldn't make out any words, but they were definitely there. I brushed it off, thinking it was just the creaks and groans of an old building. However, the whispers became more frequent and louder over the next few nights. They seemed to be coming from the walls themselves. I would lie in bed, straining to hear, but the whispers would stop as soon as I focused on them. It was as if they knew I was listening. Sleep became elusive, and I started feeling exhausted and on edge. As the whispers continued, other strange things began to happen. Objects in my apartment started moving on their own. I would leave my keys on the kitchen counter, only to find them on the coffee table later. Books would fall off the shelves, and doors would open and close by themselves. It was unsettling, but I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I was just forgetful or the apartment was drafty. One morning, I woke up to find a message written on the bathroom mirror in the fog from my shower. It said, "Help me." My heart raced as I stared at the words. I wiped the mirror clean, hoping it was just a prank or my mind playing tricks on me. But the messages kept appearing, each one more disturbing than the last. "Get out. I'm here. And don't ignore me" were just a few of the chilling phrases I found. I confided in my friends and family, but they dismissed my concerns as stress or paranoia. They suggested I was overworked and needed to relax. I wanted to believe them, but the events in my apartment were becoming too real to ignore. Desperate for answers, I decided to set up a camera to capture the strange occurrences. The first few nights, the camera didn't pick up anything unusual. But then, one night, I reviewed the footage and saw a shadowy figure moving around my apartment. It was a dark, indistinct shape that seemed to glide through the rooms. My blood ran cold as I watched it move from the living room to my bedroom, stopping right next to my bed. I couldn't see any features, but I knew it was watching me. Terrified, I began researching the history of the apartment. I discovered that a previous tenant, a young woman named Emily, had mysteriously disappeared several years ago. Her case was never solved, and she was presumed dead. The more I dug, the more I realized that other tenants had also reported strange occurrences before moving out abruptly. I contacted a local historian who specialized in paranormal activity. He told me that the building had a dark history. It was built on the site of an old asylum, and many of the patients had died under mysterious circumstances. He believed that the spirits of the restless souls were trapped in the building, seeking help and trying to communicate with the living. The whispers became more aggressive, and I started seeing the shadowy figure in person. It would appear at the foot of my bed, in the hallway, and even in the bathroom. One night, as I was lying in bed, the figure attacked me. I felt a cold, clammy hand wrap around my throat, squeezing the air out of me. I struggled to breathe, thrashing and kicking, but the grip tightened. Just as I thought I was going to die, the hand released me, and the figure vanished. Gasping for air, I grabbed my phone and called the police. They arrived quickly, but there was no sign of an intruder. They searched the apartment and found nothing. I showed them the camera footage, but they were skeptical. They suggested I was experiencing sleep paralysis or hallucinations. I knew what I had felt was real, but I had no proof. I couldn't stay in the apartment any longer. I packed my things and moved out the next day. I sought therapy to deal with the trauma, but the memories of that place still haunt me. I often wonder if Emily's spirit was trying to reach out to me, seeking help or warning me of the danger. The new tenant of the apartment, a young man named David, contacted me a few months later. He had started experiencing the same events, and I knew the haunting would continue. I still hear the whispers sometimes, even in my new apartment. They are faint, but they are there, a constant reminder of the terror I endured. I don't know if I will ever truly escape the haunting of the whispering walls. As I settled into my new apartment, I tried to put the past behind me. I threw myself into work and social activities, hoping to distract myself from the lingering fear. But the whispers followed me. They were faint at first, barely audible, but they grew louder with each passing night. I began to dread the quiet moments when I was alone, knowing that the whispers would return. I tried to ignore them, but it was impossible. They were always there, a constant reminder of the terror I had experienced. One night, as I was lying in bed, I heard a loud crash coming from the living room. I jumped out of bed and ran to see what had happened. The coffee table was overturned, and the books that had been neatly stacked on it were scattered across the floor. My heart raced as I surveyed the damage. I knew I hadn't done this. The whispers grew louder, filling the room with their eerie presence. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that I was not alone. Desperate for answers, I decided to contact a paranormal investigator. I found a reputable one online and scheduled an appointment. When he arrived, he set up his equipment and began to investigate. He used a variety of tools, including EMF meters, thermal cameras, and digital voice recorders. As he conducted his investigation, the whispers grew louder and more insistent. The investigator captured several EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, that were chilling. One of them clearly said, "Help me," while another said, "Get out." The investigator concluded that my apartment was indeed haunted and that the spirits were trying to communicate with me. He suggested that I perform a cleansing ritual to rid my apartment of the spirits. He provided me with a list of items I would need, including sage, holy water, and a white candle. I followed his instructions carefully, hoping that the ritual would bring me some peace. As I performed the ritual, the whispers grew louder and more frantic. I felt a cold breeze sweep through the room, and the candle flickered violently. But as I completed the ritual, the whispers began to fade. The room grew still, and I felt a sense of calm wash over me. For a few weeks, things seemed to return to normal. The whispers were gone, and I felt like I could finally move on with my life. But then, one night, they returned. They were louder and more aggressive than ever before. I felt a sense of dread wash over me as I realized that the cleansing ritual had not worked. The spirits were still there, and they were angry. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what. I decided to reach out to the historian who had helped me before. I told him about the investigator's findings and the failed cleansing ritual. He suggested that I try to communicate with the spirits directly. He believed that they were trying to tell me something and that if I could understand their message, I might be able to help them find peace. He provided me with a list of questions to ask and advised me to use a digital voice recorder to capture their responses. That night, I sat in my living room with the recorder in hand. I took a deep breath and began to ask the questions. Who are you? What do you want? How can I help you? I waited in silence, hoping for a response. The whispers grew louder, filling the room with their eerie presence. I felt a chill run down my spine as I listened. After a few minutes, I played back the recording. To my shock, I heard a clear response. "Emily," the voice said. "Help me." My heart raced as I realized that Emily's spirit was indeed trying to communicate with me. I felt a sense of urgency as I tried to understand what she wanted. I asked more questions, hoping for more answers. What happened to you? How can I help you find peace? The responses were fragmented and difficult to understand, but I managed to piece together a few key details. Emily had been murdered, and her spirit was trapped in the apartment. She wanted me to find her killer and bring them to justice. I knew I had to help her. I began to research Emily's case in more detail, hoping to find some clues. I contacted the police and requested access to the case files. They were reluctant at first, but I managed to convince them to let me review the documents. As I pored over the files, I discovered several inconsistencies in the investigation. It seemed that the police had overlooked some key evidence, and I began to suspect that there had been a cover-up. I decided to confront the lead investigator on the case, a man named Detective Harris. I arranged a meeting and presented him with my findings. He was defensive at first, but as I laid out the evidence, he began to realize that I was onto something. He agreed to reopen the case and promised to investigate further. Over the next few weeks, Detective Harris uncovered new evidence that pointed to a suspect. It was a former maintenance worker who had access to the building and had a history of violent behavior. The police arrested him, and he eventually confessed to the murder. With the killer brought to justice, I hoped that Emily's spirit would finally find peace. I performed another cleansing ritual, this time with the help of a priest. As we conducted the ritual, the whispers grew louder and more frantic. But as we completed the ritual, the whispers began to fade. The room grew still, and I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I knew that Emily's spirit had finally found peace. In the weeks that followed, the whispers disappeared completely. I felt a sense of relief as I realized that the haunting was over. I could finally move on with my life, free from the terror that had plagued me for so long. But the experience had changed me. I had come to understand that the world was full of mysteries and that there were forces beyond our understanding. I had faced my fears and emerged stronger for it. As I reflect on my experience, I realized that I was not alone. Emily's spirit had reached out to me, seeking help and justice. I had been given the opportunity to help her find peace, and in doing so, I had found my own. The whispers may be gone, but the memory of that time will stay with me forever. I have learned to listen to the whispers of the past, to seek out the truth, and to never ignore the voices that call out for help.